It's a real pleasure to be here in Carrick and Shannon. Just by way of a bit of background, I've been involved with the Harnessing Creativity project since it started, in a capacity having one attender to deliver marketing and promotion workshops and to deliver one-on-one business advice. So have had the privilege of meeting and working with many of the businesses in the region that have been involved with the project. And it's lovely to be back here at the end of the project and to be part of this group reflecting on some of the activities and to looking outside to other examples of what's been going on elsewhere. When I was thinking about what would be useful to present this morning, I thought it would be helpful to focus around some of the key areas that we've given business advice around, and that's been myself and Colin McKeown, who will also be a familiar face to the people who've been involved with the programme. Really to reflect on some of that advice and try to give a bit more of a framework for that advice. Have we got any startups in the audience this morning? Anybody who's thinking about setting up their own business, in the process of setting up their own business? Maybe if you just put your hand up. If you are, yeah, great, there's a fair few there. So hopefully what I'm saying should be of interest. So the key, just get the slides working. The kind of range of issues that we've talked to businesses about have been very, very varied. So right through from what should I do about social media to I don't really know which direction to take my ideas in. I don't really know what to do. I've got this great thing that I'm really passionate about and I don't know where to take it. Or I've got this thing and it's really expensive, so it's not going to work in the local shops. I need new customers, I need new business, what do I do? So I thought, again, what we've done with quite a lot of businesses is try to take them back to a basic model for them to think through some of these issues. And it's that model, really, that I'm going to reflect on. Apologies for my poor PowerPoint skills, but I'm going to take you through the different parts of this diagram to explain. What we've found with a lot of the businesses, even businesses that are more advanced, and I'd encourage all of you to reflect on this, that it is very important to take time to establish the fundamentals and to remember them and to reflect on them. And by that I mean, what's at the core of your offer? Does it meet a customer need? You know, does someone want to buy this? I might think this thing is great, but who's going to buy it? Who's interested in it? And we find with quite a lot of the businesses, actually, there was a requirement to go back to those basics and to be reminded of them. And as I set up my own business, and indeed in having worked in consultancy for my whole career, it's something you have to be constantly aware of. What is the main thing that I'm doing? What is the main thing that I'm selling? Why does anybody want this? And there are often multiple answers to those questions. So, you know, who are your customers? You can have multiple customer groups. Who do you want them to be? You may want to target some new groups. How do they expect to consume whatever it is that you're trying to sell to them? Does it match with their expectations? Or is there a latent unmet need there that they haven't realised yet? So managing those multiple answers to those questions is a real skill. Certainly working with some of the creative businesses that I've worked with, so for example, photographers, artists, people who do web design, all of those, thinking through very clearly what are the number of different segments I could be targeting this to is really important. Consider your business model's options really carefully. So think really through how you're expecting to sell this thing that you've got. How do you expect people to consume it? Are you going to do it on a subscription model? Is it a trade, direct trade, or is it you're selling to retail? Lots and lots of options there that actually we find quite a lot of businesses hadn't thought through all of the options. It probably alighted on one, maybe, which was happening to work for them. But they needed to expand out and think about other ways to do what they were doing. So just would encourage, think about all of the options on the table. Know the competition. I would say this, I'm a researcher by background, and I guess I'm just nosy. It's not bad to be nosy. It's good to think about, you know, I'm the child that always asks why. Why is it like that? Why are those businesses operating like that? What are they selling it in that way for? Always do your research. Really, really, really important. So thinking about who are the competition and what differentiates them from me. Why should a business choose, or why should a customer choose me over another business? Have I got a compelling, distinctive, differentiated offer? What makes me distinctive? And it's really interesting actually doing some work recently with some small engineering businesses who I just couldn't differentiate between 4 businesses, except on price. That was the only way I could differentiate in terms of understanding what was different about the different offers. Don't be in that box. It's a very dangerous box to be in. Be very clear about what differentiates your offer. Is it your service? Is it the caliber of the service that people receive? Is it how they receive your service? Is it how they pay for it? Think through what can differentiate me, what will make me better than the next. And also, what's the market doing? What's happening in the market? So lots of small businesses get caught up in delivering something in one way, and suddenly the market moves on and someone else is doing something different, and that scuppers and takes away their livelihood. So be conscious of the trends that are going on around you. Now, I know this is not easy. It's being a 1-person, 2-person, 3-person operation. There's a lot going on and there's a lot to take in, but it's important to have your eyes open and to be looking around you. Marketing strategies, very, very important. Colin and I spent a lot of time talking to businesses about the different marketing strategies. And again, what we tended to find was that businesses hadn't considered them in the round. They hadn't thought about all of the options. They'd maybe, again, lighted on one thing that was working for them, that was working really well. So again, really important to think about all of the things on that circle there. You know, what am I doing in terms of the brand that I'm developing? What collateral have I got? What channels am I using? And just a point that we made, certainly talking to a lot of businesses, your website is a platform. It's not a strategy. So quite a few businesses had got a website and felt that was it. You know, they were there. Well, that's just your shop front. You've just got your shop open. Think about how much work businesses do to drive traffic to that shop front. And the strategy, you know, there's lots and lots of different strategies, and not time to go into those today, but how can you find customers and how can customers find you? You know, that's ultimately what that's about when you're talking about the strategies on the marketing side of things. Make the most of networks and partners. That picture that I've got there on is a guy called Nicholas Christakis. I don't know if any of you will have heard of him, but he's a very interesting academic. He's done a lot of work around networks and what your networks do to you and how they keep you healthy or not, etc. And I guess in looking at his work, it just made me think a lot about and we talked a lot to businesses about networks as well, about how much people were using their networks and people within their business supply chain to work with them, to pull forward new ideas, to do things different, to generate that differentiation. Just very, very important to make the most of those networks. And being conscious of who you are reliant on to deliver your service. So, for example, working recently with a photographer, have been looking at how he can work with a framer to just put forward some different offers to the market. Sounds very simple, but wasn't something that necessarily was on his agenda, enabled him to offer a slightly different product. So being conscious of what's in your supply chain, who your partners are, again, very important. The last thing I say on this is around very important to know the must-do-wells. When you're a 1, 2, 3-man operation, it's very easy to be stressed out by all of the things that you think you should be doing, that you want to be doing, to be excited and visionary and passionate, and that's great. It's really, really important. But you also must understand, what are the things in my business that I've got to do well? What are the fundamentals? What are the basics? What mean I've got money coming in at the end of the month? And what skills do I need to make those must-do-wells happen? Very, very important area that are easy to lose sight of. So I just highlight that because it was one of the things that we found some businesses had sort of lost sight of a little bit. What things were essential and what skills were essential, actually. In all of that, that's this kind of framework, the diagram that I set out. And hopefully that is a helpful framework for some of you guys who are thinking about starting up or in a sort of 2-3 year stage of your business. The other thing that is really important that I think we spent quite a lot of time talking to people about their own skills and knowing themselves. Very important to know your strengths and your weaknesses. and to be aware of those, and be able to find help to help with the weaknesses, with the areas where you know you're not very good at things. And a lot of businesses will spend a lot of time focusing on the stuff that they're good at and not go near the stuff that they're less good at. So just being aware of that, and that's made me think quite a lot about the various traits that entrepreneurs and creative people have, which as I set up my business, I'm thinking about, actually, have I got the mettle to do some of these things, and what behaviours do I need to cultivate? So someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who's, you know, kind of huge god in this space. I wanted to use him rather than Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs just gets used for everything. But, you know, he talks about being very passionate about what you do, and that actually almost the rest will follow. And I think that is really, really important. It's been really important with the community of creative people that we've spoken to keep doing the thing that you're passionate about, and for other things to follow on. But you do have to have a framework that you play that into, which is why we've tried to do, why I thought it was helpful to go through some of the framework that we've worked with businesses. Just a quick word on those traits. It's helpful to look at those and think about, am I those things? I'm just interested to know, is there anybody, a show of hands really, against who thinks you can learn to be an entrepreneur? Put your hand up if you think you can learn to be an entrepreneur. So does that mean the rest of you think that the entrepreneurs are born or made? Maybe that's something we can talk a little bit about. But these are traits that tend to be personality traits. All the research highlights them. Being visionary, you know, someone like Steve Jobs is very well known for that. But for me, that also means the ability to see the bigger picture, to be tenacious, to keep going. We've certainly worked with businesses over the course of the programme who have maybe lost a little bit of their vision, who have got a bit tired, who are a bit frustrated, who are maybe a bit not sure what to do next. And that's where that visionary and ability to see beyond the current is really, really important. I mean, tend to be determined and tenacious and passionate, which matches with all of that, and have an underlying sense of confidence. The kind of doer element is really important as well. So the number of discussions we had around people saying, well, should I do this, Ruth, or should I do that, or what do you think? Very often there wasn't necessarily much between the options. It was just a matter of getting on and doing something, learning from it, and incrementally improving from it. And that business is a process of learning and doing, and that actually that's the journey you're on. Very few creative entrepreneurs do what they do because of the money. They do it because it's kind of something that they don't really know how to do anything else. Financially aware is one to point out, I think, as well. And that's not necessarily about being an accountant and knowing the ins and outs of. It's simply about understanding that it's about more coming in than is going out, and to understand where more of that money is coming from. So you may have a portfolio of activities, project services, where some things are more productive than others. And it's about understanding that and understanding the portfolio of activities that you've got. The other thing is about being a risk taker and having an ability to tolerate ambiguity. As a self-employed person, you've got to tolerate quite a lot of ambiguity. You know, I'm just looking at the moment of booking holidays, and I think, I might have some work then. What am I going to do? Reality is, I've just got to book the holiday and have the holiday, and the rest will follow around it. So being able to tolerate an ambiguous future is really, really important. Being people-oriented, I think, is really important as well. So being able to listen and learn from the people around you, and keeping your eyes and ears open is very, very important. Willing to fail, the last one. When I was at the Design Council, we had a motto which was basically you had to fail fast and fail early. So just get on, do it, try it, and incrementally improve from it. And failure is really, really important. You learn the most when you fail. And it's probably the attribute that I would say a lot of the young businesses I work with, are most scared of failure, but actually that is at the time when you can learn the most. And that's very, very easy for me to say, but you've got to try things and see how they work and be prepared to move on and learn from them. So just to very quickly round up, I hope some of that has been useful to the business setup, businesses, people who are setting up businesses in the audience. The idea of developing an overarching plan, having some objectives and sticking with those is really important. So having a little bit of a structure, having some sort of accountability around the things that you want to do, but not being afraid to move away from it as your business develops. A lot of the businesses we've worked with incrementally develop, so actually end up not necessarily where they started, and that's okay. That just shows they've gone on a journey and they've taken themselves through the highs and the lows. When it's not going well, and I'm married to someone who's self-employed, he's been self-employed for about 3 years, so I know the pressure of when it's not going well, that actually you just got to be like a bulldog. You've got to get your head down and get on with it. And that, again, is very easy to say, but is hard to do, but is very, very important, because you never know what the next day or the next week's going to bring. So keep your eyes on that bigger picture. One way of doing that is to celebrate what you've done. Be happy around the things you've achieved. I think this is really important. It's something actually I'm really bad at, personally. It's actually about celebrating the things you've done well, and be excited about the stuff you've yet to do, what that enables you to do, and forget the stuff that didn't really matter, that you've lost along the way. Doing the things that keep your creativity and passion alive. You guys know all about that. We've met businesses that just love what they do and who are very passionate about the beautiful things that they produce. And that's great, but it's important to keep that alive as well. Being open and willing to learn, I've talked about that already, and anybody who's here, I would say, fits in that box already, so that's great. Knowing what differentiates you, I've mentioned that already, but I would just underline it. Be very clear about what's different about you. And what you're doing, and find sounding boards and people whose opinion you trust. A lot of the businesses we spoke to were quite isolated and maybe weren't as networked as they could be, and certainly all the events that we attended and were part of, people could network. They very quickly were chowing down, talking to each other, exchanging business cards, all the rest of it, and that's really, really important to do that kind of networking, because you never know what's going to come from the person that you've sitting beside. So if you haven't introduced yourself to the person sitting beside you, then please do that. But because within that network, you'll find people you can trust, and people whose advice you can value, and people who listen. And that often was what we were doing for those businesses, listening with a different ear. So thank you very much for listening to all of that. I hope it was useful to some of you startups out there. And thanks very much.